Okay, Drox is dead. Baran is dead. Alright. First try, deathless. Now that's a build. Hi, Limit Break Overdrive with another Path of Exile video. This one is another Boneshatter Juggernaut build guide. In my opinion, that's the best iteration I've made so far, and I will be starting this exact build. So if you have any questions or want to see how I level, you can ask me or watch me on Twitch and ask me questions on Discord. I have a dedicated Path of Exile channel, so links are in the description, and I'm happy to help. However, just make sure you've watched the whole video, or at least the part of the video where you might have a question, because I'm going to add timestamps down below. And make sure you've read the notes section, because there's a bunch of notes, so there's a good chance your question has been answered there. Before we start, however, Path of Building has not been updated yet. So once you open up the build, you might get that message. There is no problem, the build is still good for 3.22. In fact, as soon as Path of Building gets updated, I will update the POE so you don't get this message, just in case you get it. I have here, as a picture, basically the main difference with the tree. Basically, they moved this cluster. Cluster was here, we still take it. And this cluster was here, as you can see, if I can find Path of Building. Like Harvester of Foes and the Champion of the Cause. Like, they moved these two. Like, it's here instead of here. That doesn't change anything. We take basically the same travel nodes, same path. So don't worry if you look at the build guide before. And the reason I'm releasing the build so early, right after the patch notes, is in case you guys want to test before the league. You're gonna have a whole week to do so. But yeah, this we take quite early on, and this one we do take while leveling, but we spec out of it. But it's not gonna change anything for the build. So without further ado, without the caveat out of the way, let's just get right into the build. So let's start with this skill tree. In fact, the skill trees, plural, because I've made a fewer trees than I used to do. Like, I used to make a tree every 10 points. I just don't think that's necessary. Like the starting tree, this is basically what you get. This notable here, you get, so basically it's not rocket science. If you get a pretty good axe early on, you might decide to take these life nodes, or even these before the damage, or you can take the damage first, that doesn't matter. Don't worry about this, it's just the Annoint, so it's just gonna always be there because of the item equipped. Then we got a tree for First Labyrinth. I start with Undeniable, then you get all the nodes I want to take. We do take Inexorable at around the time we switch to Boneshatter, and that I usually switch as soon as I can, but you don't have to. You can stick with Sunder and just level Boneshatter in your offhand, that doesn't matter. But once you switch to Boneshatter, you have to use Determination. So usually what I do is I put Precision on life right away, and I have enough mana for Determination and using my skill. And sometimes I can use War Banner already, sometimes I just wait later, but that's basically the plan. Then for Crew Lab, I go with Unstoppable, because the other two nodes are going to be more useful later in the game, and this is just nice, no stun, no chill, basically no chill, barely. So that's going to be helpful. Again, the other nodes, now we do take the mana reservation nodes here to be able to use Pride mainly to get more damage. And Precise Technique, that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on throughout the whole build. Basically, either on POE or in game, you can look. You need to have main hand accuracy. It needs to be more than your total life. Then you get a lot more damage. So that's why I take versatility, for example. I mean, accuracy is giving us more attack speed anyway, and as well as dexterity. And dexterity later on will help with Magebane for spell suppression. But if you have enough accuracy without these two nodes, when you're in the end game, you can just spec out of these nodes and take more damage, like you sacrifice one life node, take this cluster for example. You can tinker with that, but I feel that with the stat boost and the accuracy node, I kind of need them, but this is something that can change later on. Then Merc Lab, you see I take Untiring, and now I'm starting to get some suppression and all that. And then, for the end game, with no cluster jewels, this is what it looks like. You get slightly less damage because you need way more skill points for the mana reservation, because we also get Arctic Armor, which is the big update I made late lastly. I was doing some testing and I found that it was pretty good. And with cluster jewels, basically these 3 nodes give us, I think, more reservation than these 4 nodes and these 3 nodes, so we save 3 skill points and we get damage there instead of elsewhere on the tree. We get our leech here and we get this instead of inexorable. This is how we're gonna get our entrance charges. Basically it's just, I think it's just way better than this or even the Jug Ascendancy node. So that's basically what we're gonna do. And I've put a level 103 just for people that go there and want to see how I build. I would build the tree at level 100. Basically, I take more defense, more armor, as well as more damage, like here. I just balanced. I could have gone all out with Panopticon and the Mastery that makes the effect of your totem linger. That's a lot of damage, but I decided to go this way. Again, if I get there, I'll test and just let you guys know in an update video what's best, but basically that's how the trees are gonna work. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things in the notes, like how to level early, like the first 6 acts for gems and whatnot. There's a few crafting recipes and the Eldritch Implicits for every piece of gear, like what is good, what is not good. So a lot of information here. As for the cluster jewels, you can basically start using them right when you start mapping, because the highest level requirement for the notable is 68, I believe, here for the armor cluster. The others are like level 50, so you can even start getting your clusters during the campaign. Basically for reservation or the large cluster for axe damage. And as soon as you get this one, it's going to be slightly hard to roll the good one, which I think is Entering Composure. But once you get that, you can start speccing into your cluster jewel setup. There is also alternate quality gems. I mean, Divergent Boneshatter is the biggest one for damage. It's the only one I put here, I believe. Oh, I put Divergent Close Combat, but that's probably because it's just really, really cheap. But yeah, the others are good alternatives, and I even say why it is. So that's something you can try to look for if you do some heist or if you're a trade league. So these are quite interesting. And for the anointment, for the amulet, Potency of Will is an alternative for more skill effect duration, but you have to stay stationary for so long that I'm not sure the uptime is quite there. So I usually go with Kinetic Impact. And once I go higher than level 93, I do start, I might just pick that up and anoint something else, but like, you can play with that. But early on, this is the anoint because it's quite cheap and it's giving a lot of damage. And yeah, double dam, stun duration, so it's quite good for the price. And other anoint you can use, like damage, slaughter, for forceful skewering, butchery, and an expensive one, Whispers of Doom, which is right up here. Basically gives you an additional curse if you do so. I use vulnerability. Self-cast, because it's 30% damage. If you have a trigger ring, I think it's 15% increased damage, so it's not as good. But as a second one, I would probably use Poacher's Mark with Mark on Hit, just so I get even more damage. But you can also use Enfeeble or Temp Chains for a more defensive approach. That's all mentioned in the notes again. Now let's just go and talk about the skill gems. Alright, so our mana is kind of low because we get quite a few auras: Pride, Determination, Warp Mana, Arctic Armor, and Precision on life. But for mana, like mana cost 14 and we get like 45 mana. I could get slightly more if on the helm I had used an Essence of Loading, but it's not necessary with the implicit, so I just don't bother. I could have used the Deafening Essence of Loading for like, I think it goes to 10% efficiency maximum, or a higher Eldritch currency to get more, but this is basically what you're gonna get most likely. So for that reason, you have to use Life Tap for a few skills. What I usually do is, if I can find it, where is it? Leap Slam, I'm blind. Okay, I usually put in the same socket, for example, the helmet, cast when damage taken with Vol Molten Shell. So Vol Molten Shell will not trigger, the normal Molten Shell will, but you still have Vol Molten Shell for when you need to take to get a bigger defensive boost. With that, I link Leap Slam and Life Tap as a 4-link, just so I have only one Life Tap. So, because socket pressure is kind of high. If you get a Curse on a Hit ring, you could use Vengeance and Rage just to generate rage faster, which is going to allow you to use Berserk more often. It's deactivated, so the deeps are not too high. Like, if I activate it, it's like 9.5 mil, but it's not representative because it's not always up. I mean, it's just cheating. Oh, you get 10 mil damage. No, that's not real. Even 5.3, it's at maximum trauma stacks, so I'd say like 4.5 mil with this build, with these items, but yeah, you can get more. I think last league I got like the 6 mil without Berserk always. And other than that, vulnerability for self-cast, Blood Rage. Again, it's listed in the nose, but you can get, I think it's anomalous to get Frenzy Charge against bosses. It's just 2% of chance, but with the attack rate we get, we're probably gonna get our Frenzy Charges. So yeah, this is pretty important. 2 totems to get the buff from both totems. Gems, again, I put the Awakened gems because they were kind of cheap last league. It's not like Awakened Multi-Strike. But of course, before you're using normal, brutality, and melee fizz, the only thing is you lose a slight amount of damage, as well as Intimidate and Crush. But yeah, once you get this, you're fine. Fortify we get with the skill gem instead of on 3, because it's too many skill points, I feel. And for skills, it's about that. Like, these are not active. It's just if you get 2 curses, these are like what I consider good choices. Like Poacher's Mark would add damage, the others is for defensive purposes, but I've already mentioned that. And yeah, now we're gonna talk about the Pantheon. So for the Pantheon, the minor god is always Tukohama. Physical damage reduction per second while stationary. We're tanky enough to stay stationary for multiple seconds, so you're gonna get up to 9% quite often, and you get 2% life regen, which is great. The major god, however, when you map, you go for Lunaris, because you get 1% fizz damage mitigation per close enemy, up to 8%, so that's gonna help a lot. And the other stats like avoid projectiles, reduced LE damage if you've been hit, that's all useful because you always get hit, you hit yourself. And avoid projectiles, yeah, whatever. But when you do bosses, I usually switch to Solaris because you get 6% fizz reduction instead of 9. But it's when there's one nearby enemy, so for Uber Elder it wouldn't work. So you're probably best to stick with that. I mean, it's gonna be more of the same, but like for Maven, for Cyrus, all these loners, these bosses who are alone, this one is probably better. The other stats are not that great for us, but it's mainly the fizz mitigation we're after. So you don't need to upgrade Solaris, it's just Lunaris that you need to do. And flasks, Granite Flask for more armor, Silver Flask because Onslaught gives you a lot of damage, and Sulfur Flask for damage, or Jade Flask if you want more defense, because we use this keystone which converts evasion rating to armor. It's not going to give you as much armor as a Basalt Flask, so that's why this one is priority over Jade. And I prefer Sulfur over Jade because it's damage and life regen. And for the stats on the flask, they're already rolled like with the stats you need to get. Like 3 charges when you're hit by an enemy, it's the prefix you want on every single flask. Like movement speed on one, attack speed on the other. This one I just put effect of shock, you can put whatever, curses, doesn't matter. And this one I put armor, it's a pretty good flask. And you can't get percentage armor on 2 flasks, you're only gonna get the effect from the highest one, so that's why you need different things. And I think that's about it. Don't think I forgot anything. So, as I said, I'm going to be playing the build as a league starter. My league start will be slightly late, however, because my wife is going to be at work, so I have to wait for the kids to be in bed. So instead of 4 p.m. my time, I might start at like 7:30 p.m. my time, and I'm going to try to play for like 5 or 6 hours. So if you've got any questions, I'm going to be on Twitch streaming the game, playing this build, so you can stop by, say hi, and ask a question. I'm going to be more than happy to help. Until then, let me know down in the comment if you're gonna play this build, if you've played my previous iterations, and what you think of them. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see you next time.